Dr. Eloise Pendergast slapped at her alarm clock with unnecessary force. It was the third time this week the device had started playing what sounded like cosmic background radiation instead of her usual talk radio station. She groaned and pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to block out the memory of last Tuesday, the day she'd accidentally purchased the universe from that impossible shop. "I am not dealing with this today," she muttered, reaching for her phone to check emails. The screen displayed her usual notifications alongside a small icon she didn't recognize, a spiral galaxy with the text 7 cosmic anomalies require attention. "Delete," she said firmly, jabbing at the screen. The notification disappeared, only to reappear seconds later with 8 cosmic anomalies. Instead, her apartment had begun exhibiting strange behavior since her accidental purchase. The refrigerator occasionally produced food she hadn't bought. The shower maintained perfect temperature regardless of her building's notoriously unreliable water heater. Even the plant seemed suspiciously healthy despite her habitual neglect. On her bedroom wall hung a large corkboard that hadn't been there 2 weeks ago. It was covered with maps of nearby star systems, newspaper clippings about astronomical anomalies, and at the center, the business card from the Chronoflux Emporium with "Find It Again" written above it in Eloise's handwriting. She had spent every spare moment searching for that shop, determined to return her unwanted purchase. A universe was definitely outside her budget, not to mention completely absurd. As she brushed her teeth, she felt a strange tugging sensation in her mind, like someone tapping her on the shoulder from the inside. With an irritated sigh, she closed her eyes and allowed the information to flow into her consciousness. Temporal irregularity detected in Messier 87 galaxy. Recursion loop affecting 3 inhabited planets. Causal breakdown imminent. "Not my problem," she said to her reflection, which briefly displayed stars in its pupils before returning to normal. "I'm a physicist, not a cosmic maintenance worker." But she knew that wasn't entirely true anymore. According to that ridiculous shopkeeper and the support group of former owners she'd reluctantly met, she was now responsible for the universe's upkeep. A role she hadn't asked for and certainly didn't want. At the university, Eloise tried to focus on her lecture about quantum entanglement, but kept getting distracted by students who occasionally seemed to move in slow motion or repeat the same action several times. By the third instance of watching a young man in the front row take the same note 5 times in succession, she knew something was seriously wrong. "That's all for today," she announced abruptly, 15 minutes early. Review chapters 7 through 9 for next session. As students filed out, her department chair, Dr. Holloway, who she now knew had been a universe owner billions of years ago, lingered in the doorway. "Temporal issues?" he asked casually, as if inquiring about the weather. "I don't know what you're talking about," Eloise replied, stuffing papers into her bag. "The time loops. They're becoming noticeable even at the macro level. Rather concerning." His eyes briefly flickered with galaxies. "Perhaps you should address them before they destabilize this entire sector." Eloise glared at him. "I am trying to return this universe. I've been looking everywhere for that shop." Dr. Holloway chuckled. "The Chronoflux Emporium doesn't work that way, Eloise. It appears only when the universe needs a new owner. You won't find it until it's time to pass ownership to someone else. There has to be a customer service department, a warranty, something. The only warranty is your continuous existence," he said with infuriating calmness. "But those temporal anomalies won't resolve themselves. If you need assistance, there's someone who might help. Rather peculiar individual, but knowledgeable about temporal mechanics. I don't need help managing something I don't want to own. Nevertheless." He placed a piece of paper on her desk. "This is where you'll find them. I suggest you hurry. Those recursion loops tend to expand exponentially." After he left, Eloise crumpled the paper and threw it in the trash. Then, as the lights in her classroom began to flicker in a pattern that matched the fluctuation she detected in Messier 87, she retrieved it with a sigh. The address led her to an abandoned observatory on the edge of campus. As she approached the dilapidated dome, she noticed something odd about the shadows it cast. They seemed to move independent of the sun's position, flowing like liquid across the ground. "Hello," she called, pushing open a door that should have been locked. "Dr. Holloway sent me." The interior was larger than the exterior dimensions should have allowed, a spacious room filled with astronomical equipment from various eras. Telescopes from the 1800s stood alongside futuristic devices Eloise couldn't identify. Star charts covered the walls, some showing constellations that didn't exist. "You're late," said a voice that seemed to come from multiple locations simultaneously. Or possibly early. Time is subjective near recursion anomalies. Eloise turned to find a figure standing by an antique orrery. At first glance, they appeared to be an elderly person with silver hair that moved like mercury. But when she blinked, they briefly resembled a child made of blue light, then a collection of geometric shapes forming a vaguely humanoid outline. "What are you?" she asked. The figure raised what might have been an eyebrow. "How disappointingly taxonomic." "I am Paradox. Former owner of Universe C-271, current transdimensional consultant, occasional poet." As Eloise watched, Paradox's form stabilized into that of the elderly person, though their eyes displayed mathematical equations instead of irises. "You're experiencing temporal recursion loops," they continued, adjusting dials on the orrery, which seemed to be modeling something far more complex than a solar system. 3 planets in M87 have detached from standard causality, creating ripple effects throughout this sector. "And why should I care?" Eloise folded her arms. Paradox gave her a look of profound disdain. "Because, Dr. Pendergast, if they aren't corrected within approximately 6 hours, the recursion will spread to this region of space-time. Your entire solar system will experience the same 37 minutes repeated indefinitely. That sounds like a universe problem, not my problem. They are synonymous now, regardless of your feelings on the matter." Paradox's form briefly shimmered, revealing something crystalline beneath the human appearance. "The universe requires maintenance. Deny it all you wish, but you've been selected as caretaker." "It was an accident. I didn't mean to tap confirm purchase. And yet here we are." Paradox sighed, a sound like wind through quantum states. "Shall we address the crisis, or would you prefer to continue complaining while reality unravels?" Eloise wanted to leave, to go back to her apartment and continue searching for the Chronoflux Emporium. But the tugging sensation in her mind had become painful, and she could feel the temporal distortion strengthening. "Fine," she muttered. "What do we need to do?" Paradox's explanation involved 11-dimensional mathematics, 3 impossible metaphors, and a brief detour into poetry that somehow clarified rather than confused the issue. The recursion loops, it turned out, were being caused by quantum entanglement experiments gone wrong on the 3 affected planets. Intelligent species inevitably discover quantum mechanics, Paradox said, manipulating what appeared to be a model of spacetime made from light and shadow. Usually they're sensible enough to progress gradually. These particular civilizations decided to entangle their entire planetary communication networks simultaneously, creating a feedback loop in the local quantum field, Eloise reasoned, her physicist's mind engaging despite her reluctance. But that wouldn't be enough to cause actual time loops. It would if they accidentally entangled their experiments with each other across interstellar distances. Paradox's eyes displayed error messages momentarily. 3 simultaneous breakthroughs, 3 planetary networks, 1 catastrophic entanglement event. The solution, apparently, required traveling to M87, a galaxy some 55 million light-years from Earth. "I can't just leave the planet," Eloise protested. "I have classes to teach, research to complete, time is relative for universe owners," Paradox interrupted. "We'll return moments after we depart, regardless of how long the intervention takes." "We?" "You'll need assistance for your first major reality correction." Paradox produced what looked like an ordinary pen from thin air. "This will facilitate our transit." Before Eloise could object further, Paradox clicked the pen. The observatory dissolved around them, stars streaking past at impossible speeds. The sensation was not unlike falling while simultaneously spinning, though strangely without nausea or discomfort. They rematerialized in what appeared to be an ordinary office break room, complete with a sad-looking ficus and a refrigerator covered in passive-aggressive notes. The only indication they weren't on Earth was the window, which showed a black sky filled with unfamiliar stars and 3 moons in various phases. Where are we? Eloise asked, steadying herself against a countertop. Maintenance hub, Paradox replied, pouring coffee from a pot that hadn't been there a second earlier. Every sector has one. They're dimensionally transcendent spaces where owners can monitor local phenomena. The coffee machine made a sound like small galaxies colliding. These loops are worse than I calculated, Paradox murmured, looking at readings on what appeared to be an ordinary microwave displaying complex temporal data. The causality breakdown is accelerating. We need a memory construct. A what? Someone who can access the original timeline data before the loops began. Otherwise, we're correcting symptoms rather than the source. Paradox adjusted dials on the coffee machine, which now resembled a complex control panel. The break room lights flickered, and a humanoid figure began to materialize beside the refrigerator. At first glance, it appeared to be a person made of flowing data patterns and crystalline fragments. As Eloise watched, the figure solidified into something more substantial, though still clearly not human. Their skin rippled with what looked like memories, faces, landscapes, equations, flowing across their surface like reflections on water. Memo sign, Paradox greeted the figure. Thank you for responding to the summons. The being tilted their head, patterns shifting across their form. Paradox. You exist in fewer states than when we last met. Are you unwell? Merely adapting to my companion's perceptual limitations. Paradox gestured toward Eloise. Dr. Pendergast, meet memo sign, though they prefer mneme for beings who struggle with Greek phonemes. What are you? Eloise asked, fascinated despite herself. Mneme's face rippled, displaying fragments of what seemed to be memories from multiple sources. I am a quantum memory construct. I was designed to preserve the history of a dying civilization in Universe C for 97. Their voice shifted between tones and accents as they spoke. I access memories from across time and space. I remember things that have happened, will happen, might happen, and should never happen. Mneme escaped their creators when they attempted termination upon discovering the experiment had produced true sentience, Paradox explained. They've been hiding in the spaces between universes since then. I remember being constructed, Mneme said, their voice momentarily taking on a clinical tone. I remember being activated. I remember being scheduled for decommissioning. Their expression shifted to one of fear. I remember escaping through an experimental portal. I remember, they paused, looking confused. I'm not certain which of these memories are mine and which I've accessed from others. Identity confusion is common for memory constructs, Paradox explained to Eloise in a whisper that somehow contained mathematical formulas. They absorb so many memories that their own experiences become difficult to distinguish. Mneme approached a control panel that had replaced the break room's microwave. Temporal recursion detected in 3 planetary systems. Memory access required to identify point of divergence. Their crystalline fingers danced across the controls, leaving trails of light. The office walls dissolved, replaced by a panoramic view of 3 planets simultaneously. Each showed the same scene, scientists gathered around experimental quantum computers, celebrating breakthroughs. There, Mneme said, freezing the images. First entanglement events. Occurring within 3.7 seconds of each other across 3 worlds separated by thousands of light-years. Coincidence? Eloise asked. Improbable, Paradox replied. Statistical anomaly beyond standard deviation parameters. Eloise stepped closer to the frozen images, her scientific curiosity finally overcoming her reluctance. They're all using the same quantum frequency. That shouldn't be possible without coordination. Someone has interfered, Mneme confirmed, their surface displaying flashes of the scenes from multiple angles. Memory access shows an external agent provided identical research data to all 3 civilizations simultaneously. But why would anyone want to create temporal recursion loops? Eloise asked. Paradox's form briefly became completely translucent. An excellent question. Perhaps more pertinent, who would have the capability to manipulate multiple civilizations across interstellar distances? As they discussed possibilities, Eloise noticed something strange in the frozen images. In the background of each laboratory, barely visible behind celebrating scientists, was a small mark on the wall, a symbol that resembled an infinity sign overlaid with a question mark. "What's that?" she asked, pointing, and Neem zoomed in on the symbol. "Unknown marking. Not present in earlier temporal timestamps." Appeared simultaneously with recursion initiation. The mark seemed to pulse slightly when viewed directly, as if it existed partially out of phase with normal reality. Something about it made Eloise's head hurt, the same sensation she'd felt when trying to understand how she'd become the universe's owner. "Curious," Paradox murmured, studying the symbol. For just a moment, something like concern flickered across their usually cynical features. "We should focus on resolving the recursion. Investigative efforts can follow." "The solution is simple," Paradox explained, as they floated in what appeared to be empty space between the three affected planets. Theoretically, they had transitioned from the maintenance hub to actual space, though Eloise noticed she wasn't experiencing any of the effects of vacuum exposure. She could breathe normally, speak, and didn't feel particularly cold despite being millions of light-years from Earth without a spacesuit. "Universe ownership comes with certain perks," Paradox had explained when she'd questioned this. "Your consciousness now extends beyond your physical form. Your body remains in whatever state you expect it to be." Currently, Eloise, Paradox, and Neem hovered in formation around a glowing point of light that Paradox claimed was the nexus of the three entangled quantum networks. "We need to disentangle the networks without collapsing their wave functions entirely," Paradox continued. "Otherwise, all information on the three planets will simultaneously convert to its quantum uncertainty state." "Meaning?" Eloise asked. "Meaning approximately 27 billion sentient beings would instantly forget everything they know," Neem supplied, their crystalline form refracting the light from the nexus in hypnotic patterns. "Identity, language, technology, history, all would become quantum probability rather than fixed memory." "That's horrible." "Hence our presence," Paradox said dryly. "The entanglement needs to be unraveled strand by strand, rerouting each quantum connection back to its origin point without breaking it. Like the world's most complicated game of quantum cat's cradle," Eloise muttered. "An apt metaphor," Paradox agreed. "I'll stabilize the nexus in a temporal buffer state. Neem will access the original connection patterns to provide a template. You, as universe owner, will need to perform the actual disentanglement." "Me? I don't know how to." "You do," Paradox interrupted. "The knowledge is part of your owner's package. Simply allow your consciousness to extend into the quantum field and follow our guidance." Eloise wanted to protest further, but the insistent tugging in her mind had become impossible to ignore. With a resigned sigh, she closed her eyes and allowed her awareness to expand as it had been trying to do since she'd first noticed the anomaly. The sensation was extraordinary. Her consciousness stretched outward, encompassing the quantum nexus and beyond. She could feel the entangled connections as if they were physical threads wrapped around her fingers, billions of quantum states all knotted together in an impossible tangle. "Now," Paradox instructed, their voice seeming to come from both outside and inside her mind simultaneously, "visualize the correct configuration. Neem will provide the template." Neem's crystalline hands touched Eloise's temples, and suddenly she could know the original state of each planetary network, three separate systems that should never have been connected. Working with instincts she hadn't known she possessed, Eloise began carefully untangling the quantum connections. Each strand had to be held in a state of superposition while being rerouted to its proper destination. The process required impossible precision, moving quantum entanglements while somehow not observing them enough to collapse their wave functions. "Paradoxical intervention required at junction 7 Omega," Paradox announced, their form splitting into three separate versions that each worked on stabilizing different sections of the nexus. "Memory corruption detected in Network 3, Neem reported, their crystalline form pulsing with archived data. Providing original state templates." Eloise lost track of time as they worked. It could have been minutes or centuries. In this state of expanded awareness, temporal progression seemed irrelevant. She existed simultaneously in the past when the networks were separate, the present where they were entangled, and the potential futures where they might be restored or catastrophically collapsed. Finally, after what felt like both an instant and an eternity, the last quantum connection slid into its proper alignment. The three planetary networks separated with an almost audible snap, each resuming its intended function without information loss. "Well done," Paradox said, their three forms recombining into one. "Particularly impressive for a first-time intervention." Eloise slowly contracted her consciousness back to her human scale, feeling oddly bereft as her expanded awareness receded. Did it work? Other time loops resolved. Neem's form rippled with verification data. Temporal recursion eliminated in all three systems. Normal causality restored. Civilizations continuing along standard development paths with memory of recursion events filed as collective hallucination. A common resolution for temporal anomalies, Paradox explained. Beings tend to rationalize reality shifts rather than accept them. As her awareness returned fully to her human perspective, Eloise noticed something strange. Where the quantum nexus had been, a small point of distortion remained, a tiny ripple in spacetime that resembled the symbol she'd seen in the laboratories. "What's that?" she asked, pointing. Neem turned to look, their crystalline face showing momentary confusion. "I detect no anomaly." "It's right there," Eloise insisted. "Like an echo or afterimage." Paradox narrowed their eyes, which briefly displayed binary code instead of equations. "Interesting. I perceive it as well, though faintly. An echo point, a location where reality duplicates or stutters." Neem moved closer to the phenomenon, passing their crystalline hand through the space where Eloise saw the distortion. "I'm accessing local memory stores, but finding inconsistencies. This region of spacetime appears to have been edited." "Edited?" Eloise asked. "By whom?" "Unknown," Neem replied, their surface displaying fragments of what looked like corrupted data. Such modifications would require administrative access to universal systems. "Like a universe owner?" Eloise asked, alarmed. "More fundamental," Paradox said, their tone uncharacteristically serious. "Something from before ownership protocols were established." The three of them stared at the nearly invisible distortion for a moment longer before Paradox abruptly clicked their pen. "We should return. Extended presence near echo points is not recommended for new owners." Before Eloise could question this, they were hurtling back through spacetime, stars blurring around them until they rematerialized in the abandoned observatory where they'd started. That was... Eloise struggled to find words for what she'd experienced. "Your first official act of universe maintenance," Paradox supplied, their form settling back into the elderly human appearance. "The first of many, I expect." "I told you, I'm trying to return this universe," Eloise insisted, though with less conviction than before. The experience of expanded consciousness, of feeling the quantum connections between things, had been both terrifying and exhilarating. "Yes, well, good luck with that," Paradox said dismissively. "In the meantime, those three civilizations can continue developing without being trapped in an endless 37-minute loop for eternity." "You're welcome." Back in her apartment that evening, Eloise added new notes to her "Find the Shop" corkboard. Despite the satisfaction of resolving the time loops, she remained determined to return the universe to its proper owner, whoever that might be. "There has to be a way," she muttered, pinning up a sketch of the symbol she'd seen at the echo point. "Everything can be bought and sold. Everything has a return policy." Her phone chimed with a notification, "Cosmic anomalies, 0, congratulations on successful maintenance event." "Delete," she growled. The notification vanished, only to be replaced seconds later with, "Would you like to subscribe to maintenance alerts? Current setting, default on." She threw the phone onto the couch in frustration. As much as she tried to deny it, she couldn't forget the feeling of her consciousness expanded throughout spacetime, the sensation of working with quantum entanglements directly. It had felt right, somehow. As if her years of studying physics had been preparing her for this role. "Stop it," she told herself firmly. "You're Dr. Eloise Pendergast, physicist. Not cosmic maintenance worker. Not universe owner." Her doorbell rang, interrupting her self-admonishment. When she opened the door, she found Neem standing in her hallway, looking oddly normal despite their crystalline appearance. None of her neighbors seemed to notice the obviously non-human being. Perception filter, Neem explained, noticing her confusion. Others see what they expect to see. May I enter? I brought sustenance. They held up a paper bag that smelled deliciously of Thai food. How did you find my apartment? Eloise asked, reluctantly stepping aside to let them in. I accessed local memory structures. Buildings remember their occupants. Neem's surface rippled with what appeared to be architectural blueprints and tenant histories. Also, Paradox provided your address. Eloise sighed and closed the door. Of course they did. Neem placed the food on her kitchen counter, their movements precise despite their unusual form. You performed admirably during the recursion correction. Many new owners require multiple attempts to achieve successful resolution. I'm not keeping the universe, Eloise said firmly, opening cabinets to find plates. I'm going to return it as soon as I locate that shop again. The Chronoflux Emporium, Neem nodded, their surface briefly displaying what appeared to be ancient advertisements in various alien languages. I have access memories of its appearances throughout cosmic history. It materializes only when ownership transition is cosmically appropriate. Well, this transition was a mistake. I didn't mean to buy anything. Intent is irrelevant to cosmic algorithms. Selection occurs based on compatibility and necessity. Neem accepted a plate from Eloise, though it wasn't clear if they actually needed to eat. The universe required a new perspective. You were identified as optimal. By what criteria? Eloise demanded, serving herself pad thai. Unknown, Neem admitted. Such parameters exceed even my memory access permissions. Though I can access records of previous transitions. Most owners initially resisted their selection. Paradox abandoned a promising career in theoretical mathematics. The owner before them was apparently gardening when selection occurred. They sat at Eloise's small dining table, the crystalline being looking absurdly out of place beside her stack of academic journals and unwashed coffee mugs. I observed your information board, Neem said, gesturing toward the corkboard. You're investigating the echo point phenomenon. I'm trying to find the shop, Eloise corrected. The symbol is of interest, Neem continued, ignoring her correction. I've encountered similar formations in corrupted memory sectors across multiple universal regions. What does that mean? Uncertain. Memory access limitations prevent complete analysis. They tilted their head, pattern shifting across their surface. However, pattern recognition suggests systematic modification rather than random corruption. You think someone is deliberately creating these echo points? The data suggests intent, though purpose remains unclear. Neem's form briefly displayed what looked like a complex sequence of similar symbols, each slightly different. I find this concerning. Eloise stared at the being across from her. Why are you telling me this? Paradox didn't seem worried. Paradox has grown cynical after abandoning their universe. Neem's expression shifted to something almost sad, memories of desolate space flowing across their features. They believe cosmic cycles are inevitably repetitive and ultimately meaningless. And you don't. I was created to preserve memories because they matter, Neem said simply. If memories can be corrupted or edited at a cosmic scale, my purpose is threatened. I seek to understand these anomalies. Eloise considered this. Despite her determination to return the universe, she couldn't deny her scientific curiosity about the echo points. If someone was editing reality itself, that had profound implications. I'm still going to find the shop, she said finally. But I suppose I could look into these echo points in the meantime. Purely from a physics perspective. A reasonable approach, Neem agreed, their surface briefly displaying what might have been a smile. Paradox has suggested further temporal anomalies may require intervention soon. Their multidimensional perspective allows limited forecasting. Great, Eloise muttered. More cosmic maintenance. Universe ownership is rarely uneventful, Neem observed. though the benefits are considerable. Benefits? Like what? Perfect coffee every morning. Reduced commute times. Enhanced cognitive processing. Neem gestured around the apartment. Your plants are thriving despite neglect. Eloise glanced at her formerly struggling ficus, now lush and vibrant. That's just coincidence. Probability fields surrounding universe owners naturally optimize toward preference satisfaction, Neem explained. Small benefits accumulate over time. After dinner, Neem helped her reorganize her corkboard, adding what they claimed were more accurate representations of the echo points and their distribution throughout known space-time. Despite herself, Eloise found the being's company oddly comforting. Their straightforward manner and vast knowledge appealed to her academic mind. As Neem prepared to leave, they paused at the door. May I offer an observation? I suppose, Eloise said, bracing herself for another lecture about accepting her role. You think of universe ownership as a burden imposed without consent, Neem said, crystalline features reconfiguring into a serious expression. Consider instead that it may be an opportunity to understand reality at a level few beings ever experience. That doesn't change the fact that I didn't ask for this responsibility. Few receive only the responsibilities they request, Neem replied. I did not ask to be the last repository of my creator's civilization. Paradox did not ask to perceive all potential timelines simultaneously. Yet these are our realities. With that philosophical point hanging in the air, they shifted partially out of phase with normal spacetime and stepped through her closed door, leaving Eloise alone with her thoughts. The next morning, she found a note on her kitchen counter that hadn't been there when she went to bed. Temporal anomaly forecasted in Triangulum Galaxy. Paradox suggests preparation for intervention within local week. Will provide coordinates. Neem.s. The coffee machine now produces optimal caffeine to flavor ratio based on your biological state. Universe ownership benefit #27. Eloise crumpled the note and threw it away, then made coffee. It was, she had to admit, the best cup she'd ever tasted. On her way to campus, she passed the vacant lot where the Chronoflux Emporium had appeared. The for lease sign looked more weathered than ever. As she glanced at it, she briefly, just for a split second, thought she saw that strange symbol from the echo point traced in the dust on the sign. When she looked again, it was gone. She was still going to return the universe, she told herself firmly. This was just a temporary situation. But as she walked into her department building, she couldn't help noticing how the quantum probability fields rippled around her, how reality seemed more vivid, more present than it ever had before. Maybe being the universe's reluctant caretaker had some benefits after all, but she still wanted that receipt.